Welcome to the Semi-Interesting Podcast, where we explore some of the unique legal issues in the global semiconductor industry. My name is Nathaniel and Elizabeth. I'm an IP attorney at the law firm of Hodgson Russ, and one of your hosts.
My name is Elizabeth Morris. I'm an IP attorney and the Director of Intellectual Property and Products at Pure Storage in Santa Clara, California, and I am one of your hosts.
Today we're stepping outside the semi space to learn some lessons from a massive industry, a world of plastic rather than silicon, where the word packaging has a very different meaning. My friend Jordan Walbesser is here with Elizabeth and I to talk about Barbie and other toys, specifically strategies related to licensing and IP enforcement. Now, you may be asking, what on earth does that have to do with chips and fabs? And for semi, the sales cycle is not necessarily dominated by the holidays. Products include far less pink, and the Bay and Malibu are pretty far apart, and that's fair. But the industries do share many similarities. There are big players with giant IP portfolios and a Cold War stance against their competitors, limited options to pressure customers, lots of investment in R&D, a big global supply chain, and huge sales figures, which should sound familiar to anyone in the semiconductor industry. So Jordan, thanks for stepping out of the dream house. Welcome to the podcast, and we appreciate that you offered to share your experiences. I've known you for many years, but could you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name, again, is Jordan Walbesser. I am a computer engineer with a law degree. So there's actually some connections that I have with manufacturing and with microchips. In fact, my first real engineering job, so to speak, was at Intel. So I have a lot of experience in the hardware and semiconductor space, but that has very little to do with what I do now. So currently, after I went to law school and spent a stint in private practice, I am working for Mattel, the international toy company, as Director of Legal and Business Affairs. So while I'm there, I get to work with quite a few different aspects of the business, mostly relating to technology, a lot of licensing, and of course, a lot of intellectual property as well. So it's a great job. And even though what we sell tends to be plastic and fun and made for children, it's actually much more complex and interesting than one would imagine at first glance.
Jordan, it's really nice to meet you. I've been very excited about this podcast. And, from Intel to Mattel is a very interesting trajectory professionally. So interested in learning more about that. One of the things Nathaniel and I talked about a little bit before you got here was how actually the toy business has this aspect of kind of needing to throw elbows, right? Even though Barbie can't bend her own elbow. How do you, for instance, monitor potential infringers, and how do you compare against your IP portfolios with other competitors and infringers as well?
Sure. Yeah. And for the record, we do have some Barbie dolls with fully flexible elbow joints. So just so you know, check out the toy aisles. You'll be surprised with what you find. But jokes aside, intellectual property is key for our industry and is certainly a pillar of excellence at Mattel. So when we think about looking for infringers and managing that landscape, it's actually important for two reasons. One, certainly is the strength of our IP portfolio, the strength of our competitive advantage with our IP, the power of our brands. But there's also a very real safety component as well. There are many out there that want to make knockoffs of toys and Mattel products and others. And we care very much about safety and testing and reliability. So, going after infringers and looking out for infringers is of utmost importance for us to make sure the quality of our products are maintained and our goodwill is upheld. So we go about looking for infringers in a number of different ways. Of course, with the internet, that has made infringement that much easier to be able to put things into sales channels and to sell them perhaps even directly to consumer. But we do a lot of in-house and out-of-house third-party hired work to monitor these sales channels, whether that's Amazon, Walmart's marketplace, to social media, to see just what's out there and make sure that we are acknowledging and taking down any potential infringers. And we do this in a couple spaces too. It's not just with trademarks, which is probably our strongest arrow in our quiver, but we also look for patent issues and copyright issues as well.
In looking at articles I read online, it doesn't seem like you immediately start filing lawsuits after you find an infringer, which matches. I mean, I spent, I think, 4 hours this weekend because it was raining, listening to some of the Barbie cartoons on Netflix with my youngest daughter. And they focus more on a more friendly approach to solving problems. What kind of success have you found maybe requesting partnerships or a formal relationship with someone that you discover is knocking off products that is in the sales channels that you're monitoring?
Like many answers that you'll hear from an attorney, it depends, right? So there are certainly times where we take a much stronger approach. So counterfeit products are something that we worry about and we don't have much tolerance for. Those are the types of things that we work with customs agencies to stop before they can enter into the sales channels. But when it comes to protecting our brands, and this was especially prevalent during the recent release and marketing for the Barbie movie, there were so many people, innocent and otherwise, infringers, that were excited about what we were doing with Barbie and wanted to be a part of that. So part of the strategy that we put together company-wide was not immediately sending out a cease and desist letter and asking for takedowns and things like that. Our plan and our strategy was to try to convert those infringers into legitimate and paying licensees. So the approach that we took was a bit more friendly. We're fans, you're fans. We're really excited with what you did here. We have a standard agreement for this kind of thing. We want to make sure that the quality is good and that there's some other issues that you're maintaining contractually, but we'd like to see if we can get you on board as a licensed product, especially if it was one that we liked. And that became a huge force multiplier for our licensing efforts for the Barbie movie. As you probably know, unless you live under a rock, there were hundreds of crossover licensing products that were on sale or marketed right during the time of the movie and thereafter. So we would not have been able to do that organically or from our teams reaching out. We were able to kind of look at what the marketplace was setting up and reaching out to them and getting them to join up with us instead of infringing on our IP.
Okay, I have a couple of follow-up questions that are a little off script because I think you already answered my question that's on script. So what about if it's, I would say maybe not in your space that you're making, but definitely related. So one of the ones that I'm thinking of, for instance, from the movie is the I'm enough sweatshirt, right? I feel like a lot of people that I knew were like, oh, I want that. I at least want it for Halloween or something, or things like that, that maybe, were not in your wheelhouse of things that you make, but that were kind of related. Like, how do you handle those kinds of issues?
Right. Yeah. So we actually have a very large consumer products licensing division at Mattel. So we are very good at making toys. We are not very good at making T-shirts and sweatshirts and surfboards and rollerblades, you name it, right? The list goes on. So we constantly work with different companies that are creating those consumer products. So just like the I Am Knockoff sweatshirt, which we did sell direct to consumer. So those were things where we actually worked directly with the manufacturer and sold them ourselves. But there were plenty of occasions in the costume space, especially, where we license that out to costume makers so that there is a more official and licensed and royalty generating sales that happen out there. So, we have to pick our battles when it comes to these sorts of things, because as easy as it is to send a takedown notice to someone that's selling t-shirts or sweatshirts, it's just as easy to start a new website and to start selling them again. So we try to work upstream, right? We try to go to the manufacturers or the websites that allow you to make your own creations, make your own t-shirts and clothing. And we try to go to them and ask them to be monitoring for our IP. And not just Barbie, but we have a whole stable of world-class IP. So we try to watch a little bit higher up the chain. And I think that helps us get ahead of some of the whack-a-mole going after potential infringers.
How can a consumer who's looking at something, say on Amazon, tell whether it's a knockoff or the real deal? Like if they're just trying to be a consumer that's doing the right thing, right, and buying the licensed product from wherever.
Yeah, that's been a huge part of our strategy as we're engaging with fans, because fans want the real deal. And it's not just a quality issue. They want something that is legitimately connected and supported by the brands that they love. So there's a few things, of course. We do a great job working with Amazon and Walmart and many other online retailers to make sure that our products are listed properly and that they link back up to us. So if you go to Amazon and you see a Mattel product, you can go and you can click and see who that's coming from. You can see that it's us. So go to our product pages. And of course, we've rolled out a direct-to-consumer pathway called Mattel Creations. And we use this right now for a lot of our more, I'll say, fan-oriented products. So whether it's merchandise from the movie or clothing or things at a bit higher price point than you would typically see in your local toy aisle. So we try to make sure that there's always a good tie-in back to Mattel so that authenticity shines through.
Taking this a little bit away from Barbie to the broader stable of brands that you mentioned earlier, and there are a lot. One of the things in the semi space that has been a challenge for many companies has been consumables and other sorts of maybe not total products, but just components within the products. I'm curious to see if you had any creative ways to try to protect products outside of patents and outside of trademarks to try to engage your customers into buying the real products because you knew that they were of higher quality and to try to prevent them from going to third-party vendors.
Right. And that's the interesting thing about the toy space. I don't know if I'd necessarily call our products consumables. We hope that they don't break down. We hope that they last a very long time. And we certainly build them to be the case. But the toys that we have, they tend to be built on very basic play patterns that are not protectable. So whether that's dolls or die-cast vehicles or building blocks, trains, you name it, these are all things that exist. We can't protect that with copyright. We can certainly protect that with brand and quality, but the options for patents are limited as well. We certainly go after patents when we have a fundamental or even foundational technological change. So a good example of that is Hot Wheels track, and the connectors for Hot Wheels track are things that we've pursued patent protection for. We know that it will last long enough, I think. And we also know that those are products that are going to be around for many, many, many years. You see, the toy industry is not only is it cyclical, but we have to create new products every year. And it's not just, we've built a bigger, better, faster Hot Wheels car. We actually have to come up with new designs, and we have to follow trends. We have to make trends. We have to keep our fans engaged. So being able to be creative is one way outside of the IP system that we can engage with our fans and we can sell product better. One thing that we're very good at because of our connections is also our in-licensing. So I don't know how well this applies to the semiconductor space, but we're very good at working with, OEMs for cars, right? We can talk to Volkswagen and Ford, and we can get properly licensed vehicles, and our fans and our collectors and our kids, our customers want to play with that. They want to play with something that has that legitimacy. So that's one way, those tie-ins where we can make things more exciting and more desirable.
Well, my little boys used to play with Hot Wheels all the time, but now I'm wondering, do you have a cross license with Mini? I have a Mini. I would really love to have like a Hot Wheels Mini vehicle.
I would have to go check. We work with so many, as confusing as the semiconductor industry can be at times, right? The automotive manufacturing industry with all of its consolidation and labels and manufacturing lines. I would have to go first look and see who owns Mini at the moment. I think it's Chrysler. I think it's FCA, but I'd have to go check. But that's the type of relationship that we try to build with our fans. They want something that reminds them of something that they have or something that they love. And we can do that in a toy form factor. And that's a huge barrier to competition for anyone else that wants to get into that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that. And thinking about, how much I think Lego has done well with Harry Potter, for instance, right? That crossover was really, probably very helpful for them. When you were talking earlier about patents for Hot Wheels, that was exciting to me because I'm a patent attorney, but I can definitely see that maybe that is a more unusual remedy for Mattel. But what kinds of reactions to that kind of protection do you get from your downstream customers and ultimate consumers when you do actually have to enforce to protect your space?
Yeah, I think to our downstream consumers, to our fans, to our customers, our patent work is probably mostly invisible. So we have to be, as you know, and as a recovering patent attorney myself, as you know, when you're going to enforce a patent or even apply for one, it's an expensive endeavor. It's quite an investment. So, we have to pick and choose because we may come up with 100 new toys. It's actually more than that. It's hundreds of new toys every single year. It's difficult to tell what's going to be a hit and what will be a flash in the pan, a single manufacturing run, and that's it. So it's difficult to choose what we want to protect. And then if we were going to enforcement is expensive too. So we would have to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak. It's definitely a tool in our toolbox to stop imports and to stop counterfeit products, but there would be a balance that we would have to maintain if we were going to try to enforce our patents against either another large toy company or, a company that is building, call it off market or, third party, equipment that's compatible with Thomas the Tank Engine or that's compatible with Hot Wheels cars or things like that. And this is something that Lego has had to think quite a bit about as well. There are plenty of people out there that will sell compatible pieces and equipment and train tracks for Lego. So, there's a definite balance that we have to think about, how will enforcement affect our fans? But at the same time, how can we make sure that we're protecting our revenues and our ability to sell a product?
You mentioned earlier the importance of working with your supply chain, especially looking upstream, but we talked a lot about vendors and other companies in the supply chain. Do you have any tips about finding a good fit with a vendor through RFPs?
Yeah, we, like many other, maybe all other large companies, use RFPs as a way to suss out who would be a good fit, either from a production standpoint or what I'm much more familiar with in my practice is from a digital standpoint. So a lot of what I work on a day-to-day basis at Mattel is in our digital space. So whether it's digital gaming or video games, or what we do in our future lab, which is sort of figuring out where the future of play lies in connected play, toys that can connect to the internet or electronically with one another. That's a space that I work in, and it's not one of our core expertise. We understand it, and we have amazing designers and amazing people on those teams that understand the industry in and out. But at the end of the day, if we were to make a video game, we don't have the hundreds of artists and designers to just do that. So, the RFP process is very important for us because it allows us to allow our vendors to play with our brands and to come up with really interesting ideas. And, the RFPs are never a one and done process. We never get an RFP where someone says, we've got an idea for Barney. And we go, yep, that's it. Don't make any changes. It's good to go. Let's just get this papered up and ship it out. There's always a back and forth with our brands, with our design teams and our creative teams, and what we know about the marketplace and what we know about our fans, that we work together with them. So it's an incredibly important process, the RFPs, and a lot of the fit is quite like dating, right? You have to be able to trust the people that you're working with, and you have to have this mutual understanding and respect for the brand that you're working with. And a good track record doesn't hurt either. Okay, that's it's a nice indicator to see if something is going to work just based off of a pitch. But there's a lot of factors that go into that, and I think it's more of an art than a science.
Do you find that this dating relationship during RFPs, is it also potentially useful as an extension for monitoring IP and that kind of IP strategy?
I don't know if I've ever thought of it like that as a way to monitor. We certainly know who is interested in using our IP. So in the video game space, we will often have people come to us asking for a license to be able to use our brands in their games, either to be integrated within their games or as a standalone game. We've never really used it as a way to, I guess, to kind of monitor what's going out there on the space. It's, I think where there is one potential difference between the toy industry, consumer product industry, and semiconductors is that, the manufacturing, the creation is worlds easier, right? You don't need to build a multi-billion-dollar fab to do what we do. Yeah, you may need a factory, or you may need a talented team, but I think it's much more accessible when we do RFPs, that there's people that we've never heard of that can pop out of the woodwork, I think, that are interested in using our IP.
Related to the RFPs, quick question in terms of, is there something that would give you pause? Because you mentioned that you could just have a third party, a vendor or some other company just come out of the woodwork, so to speak, offer to start manufacturing something tangential to one of your brands, or something that you don't have necessarily the same in-house experience that they have. Have you seen any red flags on that because they aren't necessarily a established company that would give you pause and make you turn to one of the more established brands instead?
Yeah, I can think of a few examples where that has happened. And this occurs more in that future lab, the digital space. So one thing that I have had the pleasure to work on is our exploration of blockchain technologies with play. So initially, this started with the concept of virtual collectibles, right? So Hot Wheels that you can collect digitally instead of physically, and sometimes both. We often do crossovers there, but we've seen a lot of pitches, and we've been very curious about how do we bridge that gap now from having virtual collectibles to be able to unlock the utility of owning those virtual collectibles, and whether that's in gameplay or collections or otherwise is yet to be seen, and we'll probably see some things about that within the next couple of years. But when we were looking and doing RFPs for that, it was oftentimes we would see people with a lot of experience, for example, in blockchain. And guess what? They've played games before. and they'd have some great ideas for what a video game might look like that uses blockchain, but they don't have any of the video game development experience. And that can be a red flag because it's much more complicated and much more difficult to build an engaging and successful video game than one might imagine, right? We're all armchair quarterbacks in that space. I think it's something, oh, we can enjoy this. It's easy to do. I have a great idea for that. But the execution, of course, is much harder. So I think that is probably something that's universal. You may have someone where more than one skill or more than one expertise is required in order for a successful project to work. And they may have one, but not the other. So we look to see, more creative solutions, or even the understanding of, hey, we're new at this. We're really good at this. This is our strength. We're not as strong at this. And I think that humility opens some doors because there's always room for other partnerships where maybe it's not just two companies. Now it's three vendors that are working together to get something done that is better than the components themselves.
Circling back on kind of older technology. So Barbie, for instance, or maybe I'll actually talk about this in the American Girl space, because also is very American Girl focused. That's probably a product that even if there was IP associated with it, it would be more than 20 years ago. And so if there had been a patent or design patent or a regular utility patent, it would have expired and then be given to the public to do. Certainly what I've seen with my American Girl experience is the quality of the American Girl toys is very high, right? But Target has this entire line of our generation doll stuff that is exactly the same size and exactly the same sort of form factor, which I assume comes from the fact that the 18-inch soft body doll is not unique to Mattel, right? How do you handle these situations where, you said earlier, as opposed to the semiconductor space, you don't need a, crazy intense fab in order to make some of these products. And some of these things might not be really protectable because they, at a fundamental level, exist for the public. How do you handle that?
I mean, it's difficult, right? It's very difficult. And the American Girl example is a good one. So you're right. There's no patents. There's no design patent. We hold no monopoly over the 18-inch soft body doll, right? We've been doing it for a while. We have great brand strength in that space. But I think it comes down to segmentation, right? So you mentioned one of the key differentiators, and that is quality. We have, for products where we're in a crowded marketplace and maybe anyone can do the manufacturing, we can lean on that. We can lean on quality. We can lean on consumer support, customer service, right? So if you have any issues with an American Girl doll, there's a doll hospital that you can send an American Girl doll to. And that's not just, simply wrap it up in bubble wrap and send it off to, to somewhere. There's a whole process there. And it's, there's effort that the American Girl team puts into making that seem special, from, updates from the doctor and this and that. It's not just, oh, yeah, we replaced the arm. It's, it's a lot more involved and with a much higher touch point than that, which I think creates some loyalty, some brand loyalty, and lifelong fans. So that's one piece of it. But the differentiation too is as you noticed, between an American Girl doll and an Our Generation doll, they are different price points. And sure, theoretically, they're the same product and they work very much the same way, but the brand and the brand loyalty is one of those differentiators as well. It means something to have an American Girl doll and the experiences that come with it. So that's the other thing. Still around the country and around the world, there are American Girl stores that you can go into with your doll or without. Feel free to pick one up there or two. And you can have these really neat experiences as a fan. Something that is just different is another differentiator between the other products that are out there on the toy shelves.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Have definitely been to the American Girl doll store very near my house and our, on brand. American Girl dolls have gone there and gotten their hair done or had a spa treatment. Bitty Baby doesn't have hair, so she has to, get her skin cleaned or whatever. But they do a really good job with that. So I can absolutely see that. Back to the Barbie movie. Maybe there already is and I missed it, but is there going to be a Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa House on sale? Because I would probably really like to buy one for my husband for Christmas.
You are not the only one that has asked. I can't reveal too much on this one, although it's been something that many people have asked for and many people have thought about, including our designers too. So I think it's just one of those things that you'll have to wait and see what pops up later on this year. Can't make any promises, but I think it would be a really great product. And I think there's still a lot of life left in that movie. I mean, certainly you couldn't go anywhere without hearing about the Barbie movie for a good portion of last summer. I still see people, wearing branded merchandise and talking about the movie. When you have a cultural phenomenon like that, it's long lasting. It's not just a flash in the pan. So keep your eyes open, and maybe if you've been good this year, Santa might have something,
I will continue my prayers and perhaps I will see some good news. Commenting on the universality, I think especially the movie, but I have 2 high schoolers right now. But in high school, they do this kind of theme. Each class has a theme for homecoming. And the theme this year was toys overall for all of the classes. And 2 of those were Mattel products, right? So the freshmen were Pokemon, but the sophomores were Hot Wheels. And did a really cool video and a really cool float and stuff associated with that. I think the juniors were Legos and then the seniors were Barbie. And like their entire video was like associated with the Barbie movie and et cetera, and when those themes got announced, like the classes were so excited. I mean, especially the seniors. It was like definitely the thing to do that year and very exciting, even for these kids that are, 17, 18 years old.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, look, there's something amazing. So my home base is in Fisher-Price. Okay, that's where I walk through the offices, and you can see we have in cases along the wall are all the toys from today back to the 60s. And what's so neat is toys have this way of drumming up nostalgia. I mean, I've seen people walk by these shelves and they see, oh, I remember playing with that, or oh, I had one of those. There's people that can't remember, you name it. They can't remember what they did last week, but they can remember what they played with when they were younger. So there's a real attachment that's created there, which we love. And not just from a capitalistic perspective, but personally, it's very meaningful. I mean, these are things that people carry with them and relate to and dream about and get to play with their whole life. So it's a really cool industry to be a part of.
I remember you actually showing me the toy museum and doing that, having that exact reaction when we went through the early 80s section of, I had that exact thing. Yeah, I get it. Jordan, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us today. I'm not sure that we necessarily will be able to apply the doll hospital or NFTs to spare parts in semiconductor fab. Maybe someone can get creative and do that, but this was very thought-provoking and gave a lot of ideas in terms of how to approach monitoring and enforcement of your products across all levels of your supply chain. So appreciate you joining us today. And I hope you have lots of very exciting, fun things sitting on your desk when we wrap up the episode.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been my pleasure. It's wonderful to be thinking about semiconductors. Again, I know that sounds strange as both an attorney and a toy lawyer, but I've always had a passion and a deep understanding of hardware. So it's good to be back in a sense, and I hope that your listeners can find some parallels and maybe even think of some ways to be creative and play around a little bit with their brands and with their products to be successful in a really difficult marketplace.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really interesting to see the crossover between these 2 spaces. I wasn't sure it existed when we were thinking about putting this episode together, but I've learned a lot from you, Jordan. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks again.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Semi Interesting Podcast. You can find more episodes wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube.
And if you enjoyed the episode, we always appreciate 5-star reviews. While we talked about legal issues, none of the information shared during this podcast is intended to be legal advice. If you have any questions about information we cover or ideas for a future episode, feel free to contact me or the other attorneys at Hodgson Russ. You can find contact information at www.hodgsonruss.com.